Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. Just a quick note before we dive in. The information that we share is meant to educate and inspire, not to serve as personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so be sure to consult with your own financial professional for guidance that fits your life. And just so you know, the opinions shared in this podcast are my own and those of my guest, and they don't necessarily represent those of any organizations that I'm affiliated with. For more important disclosures, please go to our webpage at pearlplan.com. Now, let's get started. Welcome back to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I am so pleased to be joined today by Megan Schwan. She is the CEO and founder of Sidekick Accounting Services, and we are going to be talking about our personal lessons learned as business owners and parents, but also the mindsets that are necessary to be a successful CEO. And while Megan works with people that are business owners, I think the lessons learned are so important for all of us to embrace as the CEO of our personal financial life. And so I can't wait to have this discussion. Megan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm excited to be here.
Well, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know that you're a business owner, but what's, how does that integrate into the rest of your life?
Well, for me, business ownership has been so impactful. It really helped. I've been in business for 11 and a half years, I guess I should start.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's been a journey. But it started out like when I was much younger, of course, and still kind of figuring out life, and having a business has helped with building my confidence. It's helped to provide for my family, helped get me through some pretty rough life circumstances, additional children, moving across the country. So like, it's kind of intertwined in everything that I do. And like now, the last couple of years, I've really been focusing on leadership development and personal development for myself, because we're hoping to grow and scale. And the more, you grow, the more you have to level up as an individual, not just as a business. And so that's been kind of a really big part of my life, has been my business and my personal growth. So it's been a really great journey so far.
Well, as a fellow business owner, I couldn't agree more. Running a successful business, it is so much of my identity, but it can't be everything. And I do think like some of the, kind of foundational CEO mindsets are to acknowledge that it is so important, but also acknowledge that, you've got to take care of yourself first. And there's other things that are important. I'm sure we'll be weaving that in, as well as talking about, some of the great and important number things as well. But why don't we dive right in there? You have developed kind of the mindsets and secrets that CEOs have. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you see that have to be mastered in order to be a successful business owner? And like I said, we're applying these to kind of personal lessons learned for your personal balance sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to say I've got a few. So the first one I would say is learning how to not just do the thing, but like work on the thing, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
Don't just work in your business. You got to work on your business. And that's really, I think, moving from more like technical work to more strategic work, to being more of the decision maker versus just the task doer. And I think that's the case in our personal lives too, because as we grow, we manage our families, we manage our households. And so instead of us like just being young college kids trying to figure it out, like we have to start thinking more forward, thinking about retirement, thinking about insurances, like all these different things where it's like, you can't take a backseat to life, and you definitely can't take a backseat as a CEO. So I think there's a lot of synergy there.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I've learned is, like you mentioned, I think taking care of yourself, right? Like not being in burnout. That's like so important. You got to learn how to not just hustle, but really create boundaries that are in alignment with where you're trying to go. So that boundary led leadership is really important in business as well as your family. Like you can't say yes to everything. And, as you start adding children and spouses and things to your life, right? There's like all these demands that come and you can't say yes. You can't be the yes person to everything. So there's a lot of similarities between that.
Oh,
Because,
I should like
yes.
if we could
Yeah.
just pause there. I so agree because I don't want to group everybody into one group, but there
Yeah.
are many of us that are likely listening where you're a people pleaser, you want everything to be perfect for everyone, you have kids and you don't want
Yeah.
them to experience the hardships or difficulties necessarily that perhaps you went through.
Mhm.
And when you're constantly looking externally to make sure everything else is okay, sometimes that can be at the impact of yourself, your finances. The same goes in business. Frequently, I'll
Yeah.
see really externally successful looking businesses that on the inside, maybe the
Yeah.
numbers aren't working. It looks
Right.
like so amazing from the outside, like, oh my gosh, you have so many employees and this and that. And it's like there's no money left at the end of the month to pay
Lim-
the owner, perhaps.
it-
And so I see that on both sides, both working with busy business owners as well as in family dynamics, especially for single women, where there's nothing left to kind of fuel you, and that is the point in time where working with somebody like you, Megan, to say what do the books look like, where like we
Right.
can't just run either at a deficit or too low in terms of profits. I know you're a profit first expert. Um,
Yes.
and the same goes in the family where, everyone needs everything, but there are limits and boundaries in many cases that need to be
Yeah.
enforced.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it starts like at that end goal. Like when we work with clients, we always ask like the first thing we ask them is what do you want out of your business? Like what do you want it to look like? What are you hoping to get out of your business? Because it should work for you. But the same is on the family side too. Like I'm a single mom, I have 3 boys at home. And I've had to think about it that way. Like, what kind of family am I trying to be, like raise? And that kind of determines like what we do.
Uh-huh.
So like we took a break from some of the sports. My older son is playing sports, the younger ones aren't, because as a single parent, like I just didn't have the capacity to run everybody around. And for me, it was more important to spend time one-on-one with them versus like always being at a sports event. And that was just our personal decision. But for me, that was a boundary, and there was some, people's opinions that were like, oh, well, you got to have the boys in sports. And it's like, well, they're doing other physical activities. So they're still getting that outlet. It's just not structured in the same way. Right. And that was the right decision for me. And same thing on the business, right? Side, you have to think about where you're trying to go. And if something's not in alignment with it, then it's okay to say no to that thing, like that client or that program or that software or whatever it is. Like there's always like shiny pennies, right? That they talk about shiny objects that you can say yes to and that look really great. But if it's not in alignment with where you're trying to take your company, then you can say no to that. And that's totally fine. And that's a huge part of leadership is being able to say no.
Yeah, and it's okay. I know in my own experiences, we've done things in the business that have been amazing, that worked out great,
Mhm.
and other things, everything is somewhat of an experiment unless you're
Yeah.
really picking up a
For
recipe in a franchise model or something like that.
Right.
So, if something isn't working, it's time to edit, pivot, delete. And so acknowledging that, being in my case, I love to be transparent with my team and say, I am the shiny object person. Feel free to push back when, I come with the next best thing, but we haven't perfected what we committed ourselves to already. Or, we need more of something that is working. Like we need to focus on that more. The
Right.
same goes in your personal life. You may be modeling your life off of what you see on Instagram or what you are, what your friends in pickup line, car line, or your neighbors are doing, and feel free to kind of craft the strategic vision that is right for you and your life. And that may not have anything to do with the script that everybody else has picked up or is
Right.
displaying on their social media.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
that's
what
the
are
great part. life and business, right? Is you get to make it whatever you want it to be. So,
If you have the courage to like step above and figure out what that actually is, right? Because so many of us are so busy in whatever, kind of stage of life that you're in. So that just never, there's never time to think about like what do we need to tweak? What do we need to change? I think
yeah,
like, I don't know what you would say, but definitely setting aside some time and perhaps an accountability partner, whether you're in a relationship or you have a trusted friend who can kind of be a trusted mentor or course professionals like ourselves, where you
right.
do have the space and time to think about what's important to you, what you need, what you need to change over time, even if it
Mhm.
requires an investment.
Right. Yes, for sure.
So tell me more. What are some of the other, kind of secrets that you see to successful CEOs?
Um, well, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but it really going from just employee or business owner to CEO really requires you to get comfortable with your numbers. So, from going
Um,
from avoiding your numbers to embracing data for decisions. And I think that's a really huge, crucial part for business owners, especially because so much information is in the data when we take the time to look at it. Um, and we can make so many less mistakes. We can get so many places quicker if we pay attention to the data versus only going off of like our feelings or winging it
yeah.
because the situation came up and we didn't, take the time to look at what was going on in the numbers of our business and organization. So that I think is a huge thing. I always tell people like big businesses, larger companies, like they spend days looking at their numbers, and that's for a reason. It's
Mhm.
because doing that is how you build successful and sustainable businesses. So you can't ignore it. And the more you embrace it, the more you step into it, the more confident and clear you're actually going to become. And that I think is kind of the piece people miss. Like they miss that as like the benefit of looking at your numbers. Like everybody sometimes like I said, not to group everybody, but for most people, like they avoid their numbers.
Yep.
Numbers are scary. It's boring. You don't feel like you know what you're doing. But the more you can step into it, like the benefits are huge. Like you can understand how your decisions translate to your numbers the more often you look at them, and then
Mhm.
you end up being able to make better decisions as a result, which takes you forward faster, and really helps you to prioritize the things that you want to prioritize. And it's really about being proactive versus reactive. And as a business owner and a leader, and CEO, you need to make sure that you're being proactive versus reactive when it comes to your business and your life.
I couldn't agree more. I think like you need to know, if you're a business owner, you need to know the flow of
Ye-
when the numbers are relevant. And if you've never caught up on your books, which is, the world that you live in, Megan, if you
Yes.
are not caught up on your books, I have had some business owners in the past where it's just like, oh yeah, we're wrapping up last year's books in April, and of course
Yeah.
there may be some loose ends that need to be tied up. The balance sheet may need to be tweaked when you do your taxes, based on, what you're reporting, recording, closing out. But if you don't know until your taxes get done what the business did last year, that it's just like, that's fine if you're independently wealthy, but if you're relying on this
Right.
business to, pay your bills, which most business owners are and should be,
Yeah.
then I have a lot of anxiety on their behalf.
Yes.
And so getting that rhythm, of course, I'm assuming, Megan, unless you have a magic wand, that books aren't always wrapped up on the last day of the month, right? Like it
Right.
does take a minute. But
Yes.
if you don't have a cycle where things are regularly being tied up, so you can say what happened last month or last quarter in, you know, somewhat real time. So it's not on the last day of the month, but hopefully it's also not, 3 months later,
Right.
then you're flying blind.
Yeah.
Um, and that if you're sitting in that situation, I mean, changing bookkeepers, looking for options. I mean, what would you say for somebody who comes in and they're just like, the books are a mess, or we had somebody on our team responsible, but they left, or I don't know that they understand. How do you guys kind of get in there and roll up your sleeves?
I mean, basically by doing that, we get in and see, where things are at, of course, and then, kind of craft that plan of what to do going forward. So making sure we have all of the accounts making sure they're all business accounts, making sure, people have their personal and business stuff separated. And if not, then, to start doing that from this point forward, so crafting the plan with that. And then we get all the data together, because that's the first part that needs to happen anytime. Like, the information needs to be done. It needs to be reconciled. It needs to be accurate. And then from there, we can start crafting a plan. And this is really where I love Profit First in this, because like you mentioned, like, the reports kind of get done after the month ends, but they're still really important. But Profit First, which is a cash flow management or a money management system that you can put in your business, I feel like it really helps bridge the gap between day-to-day, what happens on a day-to-day, and your monthly reports. So using those two things together is really, really powerful. And that's what we've seen with a lot of our clients, and what we help put in place for them, so that they have more confidence, they have more intention when it comes to their money and where it goes. And the purpose for every dollar really is essentially what it comes down to.
And when correct me if I'm wrong, but the concept of Profit First is that you build in your profit to your planned cash flow, so that you don't wake up at the end of the month and find that everybody else has been paid, but there's nothing left to pay the business owner.
Yeah. Yeah. It really focuses on true profit. Like, people think about profit as like your income minus your expenses, and what's left over is your profit. But like you said, a lot of times people aren't paying themselves. They're not saving for taxes, and they don't have any plan for strategically reinvesting. So Profit First kind of flips it, and you take your income, but then you build those other things in on the top: your profit, your owner's pay, your tax savings, and then your expenses. So it really helps to force profitability and stabilize your cash flow. And in order to be successful and sustainable, you need both of those things consistently in your business. And that's what is really great about that system.
I love that. And if I could just pivot to the personal side, for those of you who listening who aren't business owners, the same concepts are mirrored when it comes to budgeting and cash flow. I know budgeting is kind of a four-letter word, but it it is necessary in many cases. Not every client that we work with has to have a budget down to the penny. But
Right.
if you're in a situation where you carry credit card debt through the end of the month, you're constantly going to personal loans or debt in order to finance things, or you just can't get that cash flow level up where you have an emergency reserve. If surprises keep coming up, then
Mhm.
that is where we need to focus on cash flow more. And then there's a whole subset of clients who just were raised to balance their checkbook. They've converted that into religiously using software, and whether it's YNAB or we have subscriptions for clients with Monarch Money. Those are great tools. And, it could be just a good old fashioned spreadsheet. Budgeting is so personal. But, getting that cash flow right then starts to feed and be additive to your net worth, which for on the personal side is like your balance sheet on the business side, which I know is a really important thing to maintain and understand when it
Yeah.
comes to business owners.
Right. Yeah, for sure. It is. Got to have all of it together, right? On both sides. And we often see like people's personal money habits transfer into their business money habits, so like the two things are very well connected as well. So if you want to improve one,
Absolutely.
improve the other, start working on one side or the other on it.
Well, and
So,
not every person is, you can be an extraordinary expert in your field, a visionary CEO. That does not mean that you have the capability or the best use of your time is to
right.
write certainly, I hope you're not, kind of doing your tax withholding payroll without being like kind of set up in the payroll software, or you may need the guidance of people that can see from external because you're so wrapped up in the day to day and what has to happen for the business that it's
Yeah.
really hard to see the forest because you are right in the thick of the trees.
Yeah.
So in so many
Exactly.
cases, as you scale, whether it's, kind of on the personal side, graduating from, kind of having the Maslow's basic hierarchy of financial needs kind of nailed to on the business side, the company is up and running and just as you described your hopes for your business, you're scaling now where you're growing, you're taking
Yeah.
on more risks, but you're tackling more opportunities as well.
Yeah.
Then that is a point in time where finding whether internal or often outsourced resources that can help you run
Yeah.
can be so valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely a mindset shift too. Like, moving from doing it all yourself to starting to delegate and manage is a huge part of business growth and leadership growth as well. And it's very important to do that in that process, especially if you're wanting to grow, make a bigger impact, have a greater reach. Like you can't do it all yourself. And I know for me, like even just growing as a CEO, as a mom, one of the things on my list this year is I'm hoping to hire a home manager because it's hard to do all of the things around the house and run a business and spend time with my kids. And there's no shame in that. And I think like the more we can talk about and normalize that, the better, because it's true. Like you can't do all the things. It's too demanding, and learning how to delegate in life and business are really important parts to growing as a leader and as an individual.
I couldn't agree with you more. Why is there, if you're a business owner, you talk to another business owner, you talk to your friend network, and you say, I just outsourced my books. I hired an
Yeah.
accounting firm to really help me nail things when it comes to profit. They would applaud you and say that is a sign of success. But we
Yes.
have this on the personal side of things, whether it comes to having somebody pick up your kids. If one of your younger kids decides they just have to have a passion for a sport, but you can't swing being at every practice and game, that may
Yeah.
be something that you end up hiring many people, kind of
Right.
agonize over hiring either household help. My mom didn't have a maid or executive assistants as well. And so why is there no shame when it comes to the business side for outsourcing what you need, and yet on the personal side, and it goes all the way to hiring financial professionals, including accountants. Like I can do it myself when it comes to
Yeah.
TurboTax or financial planners. Like there's some sort of shame that you can't DIY that yourself. You should
Mm.
just, pick up a finance book and invest in indexes. And certainly, you can quantify the money saved because you know what someone might charge, or the expenses involved in investment advisory, but you
But
can't quantify the opportunity cost. You can't quantify the anxiety or stress that you take on
right.
yourself if you don't have the same confidence as the person who wrote the book, who's telling you how to do it, who
Yeah.
finds it no problem to managing the day to day. And so
Right.
getting rid of that mindset of like there's shame in hiring on your personal side, whether you're a business owner or an extraordinary executive or someone who can afford it, then we really need to talk about that over time.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. There's a lot
Kudos
of
to you for hiring
yes, that's the goal. So,
eventually.
yep.
Well, any other kind of lessons learned, or, kind of if you could tell someone who is aspiring to really have everything under control, what you see in the most successful CEOs? I mean, I guess one of my things is nobody's perfect. And even if things look
Mhm.
great on the outside, there can be a lot of frustrations and a lot of acknowledgement of weaknesses on the inside. But what
Yeah.
else do you see that you wish everybody knew when they were aspiring to success?
Whew. Um, I guess kind of on that same note, because I know a lot of people always look at me and they're like, oh, Megan's got it all together and she's running a business and raising her kids. And I always tell people like, most of the time, or probably half the time, I feel like a hot mess, so like just trying to, and a lot of that comes from like previous traumas that I'm trying to heal from, as well, and things like that. Growing as a leader is really hard work. Doing work on yourself is a lot of there's a lot of intentionality and purpose that has to go into it, which is tough. I've got a lot of responsibility in terms of like my team and my kids and our clients. Like it just kind of goes out. So kind of on the same note, which you were mentioning, like give yourself a lot of grace. Like people are not perfect and we're all struggling and in different areas, right? There's always something that we got to overcome and work through. So giving yourself a lot of grace is really, really important to this leadership journey or mindset shift, from one place to the next place and growth. And I know I had a lot of people tell me, or have had a lot of people tell me that, like, giving yourself grace, celebrating the wins is probably the other piece that's like really, really important. And it doesn't have to be like, yay, I closed a, $100,000 deal or anything like that. Like it can be like, I took a shower, I meal prepped today.
That is an amazing accomplishment.
Sometimes it's like that, right? So giving yourself grace, celebrating those little wins, and always just moving forward, like just continually pushing forward is like the other piece that's like really, really important to living life, growing in life, building leadership, creating a successful life. Like it's all about consistency, right? So just like those little incremental steps forward are huge. And I would just want to encourage anybody listening to focus on those things.
Well, Megan, as you described, and thank you for the vulnerability to share what I also know to be true, which is things can be extraordinary and still feel very imperfect when it comes to busy business owner's life, especially as a woman. If you are someone who's listening and that resonates with you and you don't have someone you can say that out loud to, then you deserve that person, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a business coach, whether it's a personal coach, a financial planner, your bookkeeper, accountant, all of those things. Like if you're not working with people that celebrate your vulnerability and also tell you when you're doing a good job, remind you to celebrate your success, but also are there without judgment for the moments where you feel like you could have done better or it should be different, then you need to rethink who you're working with or seek that person who can be a trusted counsel, because without that, it can be really lonely, vulnerable, anxious, stressed. And if you're constantly living in that state, that has impacts on your health and well-being that need to be addressed.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, for people listening, can you tell us just a little bit about your service offering and describe to our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So our firm, Sidekick Accounting, provides bookkeeping, tax prep, tax planning, and then we're a certified profit first firm. So we help with that system implementation. And then I also do business coaching related to that as well. So
Amazing.
it's really full service, really helping businesses grow and scale to the next level, pay more attention to their numbers and really achieve their goals within their business. Which is really awesome. And kind of like you said, like we end up a lot of times talking people through many different life circumstances. We've had some clients that are like, I feel like you're our therapist, or thank you so much for, walking me through this vulnerable point, because we're dealing with people's money. So it's cool to be on that side of things. It's an honor to be on that side of things, which is really neat. So
It must be so rewarding. Do you work with people? I know you're located, remind me, in Florida, right?
yeah, I'm physically in North Central Florida, but our firm is virtual. So we work with clients across the US. My team's all virtual, which has been really great. It's been awesome to be able to build that for a lot of people too, to have that flexibility, work from home, as well as with our clients.
Yeah, we're very similar. A lot of areas of money really are agnostic. You need to understand state tax laws in some cases, but
Right.
we're very similar. About half of our clients are located in Michigan, and half are all over the country in more than 30 states. So,
Yeah.
um,
Awesome.
one of the wonderful things about kind of living in a hybrid world is that you can find the perfect fit for clients
Yeah.
wherever they may be.
Hmm.
Are there certain sizes of business, like amounts of revenue or number of employees that are typical, or areas of industry or profession for
Yeah,
your clients?
it depends on the service. I would say, like, generally speaking, all of our clients are usually around startup to around 3-4 million.
Okay.
It just kind of depends on the service and what we're doing. And then in terms of size, most of our bookkeeping clients have some kind of a team. So they have contractors or they have employees looking to get to the next level. For taxes, we do taxes for everybody. So
Yeah,
that's
makes sense.
not as demographically proven, but we work with a lot of women and minority owned businesses. especially in like the service industry. So daycares, group homes, B2B, coaches, consultants. We also work with nonprofits and the limited food restaurants. So like food trucks and mall type restaurants. We have other clients as well, but those are kind of the niches we focus on.
Amazing, Megan. Well, I'm so glad to know you. And for everyone here, I hope you realize that your money mindset, whether you're the CEO of your business or your life, as I hope all of you are, your money mindset, your mindsets to leadership and success are something that need to be worked on and deserve your attention and care. And certainly your advice is helpful on that for everyone listening. So thank you so much for sharing, Megan.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Melissa.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to pearlplan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned.